Otis Langley forged blades for ranchers and horseshoes for cowards. But the day the Bone Creek gang walked into his forge demanding rifles, he reached for something he hadn't touched since the war. In the small town of Ironwood, Otis Langley was known as the quiet man with a hammer. He spent his days in a small, sturdy forge nestled between the tall pines and the winding river. The rhythmic sound of metal striking metal echoed through the valley, a comforting tune to the townsfolk who passed by, each one respecting the craftsmanship that came from his hands. Otis had a natural talent for blacksmithing. Each blade and horseshoe was made with care and precision, unmatched by anyone else. Otis preferred solitude over chatter. He found peace in his work, focusing on the flickering flames and the glowing coals that danced in front of him. While others sought out company, he often turned inward, lost in thought or humming softly to himself. People recognized his skill and dedication. They often came to him not just for repairs, but for advice about life and its troubles. Despite his reserved nature, Otis carried an air of strength that earned him quiet admiration. He was not just a simple blacksmith. There was a depth within him that many sensed but few understood. Whispers circulated that he had once led men into battle, though he rarely spoke of those days. Instead, his past lay buried beneath layers of coal dust and hammer marks. When danger began to loom over Ironwood in the form of the Bone Creek gang, Otis's peaceful existence would soon be threatened. Little did they know that this quiet blacksmith had a past filled with courage and grit that could rival any story told around the town's flickering firelight. As he prepared each day at his forge, he unknowingly stood at the edge of becoming much more than just a craftsman. He was about to become the town's protector. Otis's forge was more than just a place of work. It stood as a beacon of strength and craftsmanship in the heart of Ironwood. Built from sturdy timber and stone, the forge had a welcoming presence that drew people in despite its rugged exterior. The sound of the roaring fire could be heard long before one reached the entrance, where flames flickered and danced, providing warmth against the chill of the surrounding woods. Inside, the forge was an organized chaos, filled with tools hanging neatly on walls and piles of raw metal waiting to be transformed. Otis had arranged his workspace meticulously, knowing where every hammer and anvil belonged. As he worked, the air filled with the comforting scent of heated steel and coal smoke, mixing together in a way that spoke of hard work and dedication. The most impressive sight was Otis's creations. Each item he produced, a finely crafted sword or a robust horseshoe, was not just functional but also a work of art. He poured his heart into every piece, ensuring that they were strong and durable. Villagers often marveled at how he could turn a mere lump of iron into blades that gleamed with promise or tools that would last generations. Customers left his forge not only with their purchases, but with admiration for the man behind them. Otis's forge became a gathering place for townsfolk seeking advice or simply wanting to share a moment of camaraderie. They respected his quiet demeanor and his talent, often telling tales of how his craftsmanship had helped them in times of need. Yet, as whispers of the Bone Creek gang grew louder, the forge would soon transform into a refuge and fortress, sheltering not only Otis, but also the hopes of an entire town prepared to defend their way of life. Little did they know that the quiet man within those walls held secrets far deeper than any blade he had forged. The peace in Ironwood was shattered one fateful afternoon when the Bone Creek gang arrived. Known for their ruthless ways and a trail of chaos left behind them, this group of outlaws was feared by many. With tattered bandanas covering their faces and dark cloaks billowing behind them, they rode into town on horses as wild as their reputation, drawing wary glances and hushed whispers from the townsfolk. The gang had become infamous not only for robbery, but for acts of violence that often followed in their wake. Tales circulated in Ironwood about their merciless raids on neighboring settlements, where they had stolen food, supplies, and even valuables without a hint of remorse. When the mention of the Bone Creek gang sprang up in conversation, fear would grip young and old alike, reminding everyone of how quickly safety could dissolve into danger. The leader of the gang, a tall man named Flint with piercing blue eyes and a scar running from his brow to his jaw, was particularly notorious. Many said he took pleasure in instilling fear wherever he went. He thrived on it. Rumors hinted that his charisma masked a cunning mind, capable of devising malicious plans that put people's lives at risk. As the gang began to make their presence known in Ironwood, it became clear they had set their sights on Otis's forge. They sought weapons, sharp blades, and fierce tools to enhance their already menacing arsenal for their next big raid. What the gang didn't anticipate was Otis's quiet strength and determination to protect his town. As they approached him with threats dripping from their lips, an unbreakable spirit stirred within him, ready to challenge whatever darkness lay ahead. The stage was set for an inevitable clash between Otis Langley, the blacksmith with undisclosed skills, and the Bone Creek gang that sought power through fear. The tension in the air was palpable as Flint and his gang stormed into Otis's forge, their imposing figures blocking the light from the doorway. The sound of metal clanging and the glow of embers were replaced by the heavy atmosphere of intimidation. Flint's piercing blue eyes surveyed the workshop as he stepped forward, a smirk playing on his lips. "Langley," he called out, his voice dripping with authority. "We need weapons for our next raid. You're going to supply them." The demand hung in the air like a dark cloud, and Otis felt his heart race at the threat embedded in those words. With a steady gaze, Otis straightened himself, refusing to let fear dictate his response. "I won't make weapons for you," he replied firmly, each word laced with conviction. "What you plan to do is wrong. I will not be part of it." Flint's smirk faded as irritation twisted his features. "You think you can just refuse us? We'll make you regret that choice," he threatened, stepping closer so that the heat of his fury matched that of the forge. Otis stood tall, undeterred by the threat looming over him. "If you continue down this path of violence, you'll face consequences far greater than my refusal," he warned, his voice calm but unwavering. The gang exchanged glances, surprised by this quiet man's boldness. They had expected submission, not defiance. Realizing that intimidation wasn't working, Flint turned to his gang members. "Fine, we'll be back," he growled before striding out of the forge, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Once the doors closed behind them, Otis took a deep breath and clenched his fists. He understood that this wasn't just about craftsmanship anymore. It was about standing for what was right, even in the face of danger. With a renewed sense of purpose, he returned to his anvil, knowing that a battle was brewing on the horizon, not just for him, but for all those who relied on his steadfast principles. After their initial confrontation, the Bone Creek gang did not take kindly to Otis's defiance. As twilight descended upon Ironwood, Flint and his men returned to the forge, dark clouds gathering in the sky above as if mirroring their intentions. They dismounted their horses with an air of menace, casting long shadows on the ground as they approached. Flint stepped forward, a sinister grin stretching across his face. "You made a mistake refusing us, Langley," he sneered. "We're not just here for a friendly chat this time." His voice dripped with malice as he gestured to two of his gang members who cracked their knuckles ominously. "Maybe you need a little persuasion," one of them growled, stepping closer to Otis, who remained steadfast behind his anvil. The threat was clear, violence was not off the table. Flint leaned in, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "You think your quiet ways will protect you, will make you pay for every second you waste resisting us." As they spoke, Otis could feel the weight of their threats pressing down like a heavy iron chain. He glanced around his forge. It had always been a place of creation and safety, but now it felt like a target under siege. The gang's willingness to resort to violence was evident in their aggressive stances and sharp words. "Let's say we get our weapons elsewhere," Flint continued, his voice low and dangerous. "If you won't help us, we might have to find another way to convince you." He paused dramatically, letting the unspoken implications hang in the air. Otis took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was coming. He knew that he couldn't let fear dictate his actions or allow these men to compromise his principles or the safety of Ironwood. "If you come back here looking for trouble," he warned steadily, "you'll find more than just a blacksmith waiting for you." The gang exchanged glances filled with both frustration and anger before Flint turned away with a final glare. "You'll regret this," he spat before leading his gang out of the forge, leaving Otis alone once more, but resolved that he would not back down from defending what mattered most, his community and its values. As the Bone Creek gang departed from the forge, Otis felt a flicker of dread but also an unwavering resolve. He knew the threats they made were serious, and he needed to ensure they understood the weight of their actions. On the next day, as the sun began to rise over Ironwood, casting golden rays through the forge's open door, Otis decided to take a stand. With a steady heartbeat and a calm demeanor, Otis began preparing for their return. He fashioned his tools with care, but this time his mind was focused not on crafting weapons for them, but on protecting his home. When Flint and his gang appeared once more, Otis met them at the entrance of his forge, his expression unyielding. "Flint," he called out firmly as they approached, their faces showing confidence tinged with arrogance. "You think coming back here will change my mind? You're mistaken." Flint smirked, yet there was an edge to his expression. "And what will you do about it?" he taunted. "I will not create weapons for your raid," Otis replied slowly, ensuring each word pierced through the bravado of the gang. "What you seek is built on violence and fear, and if you continue down this path, it'll be the people of this town who will suffer, and I won't let that happen." He paused, letting the gravity of his words sink in. "You threaten me now, but know this. If you harm anyone in Ironwood, you will face consequences far beyond what you can imagine." His voice remained calm and steady despite the danger before him. The gang members exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected fear or submission. Instead, they found a man ready to stand against them. Flint's confident smirk faltered for just a moment as he took in Otis's unwavering stance. "This isn't over," Flint warned quietly, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice as they stepped back, realizing that Otis was not just a quiet blacksmith. He was ready to protect what mattered most to him. With that warning hanging in the air like smoke from a freshly stoked fire, they turned away, leaving Otis resolute and prepared for whatever lay ahead. Despite Otis's strong warnings, the Bone Creek gang remained dismissive of his resolve. As they gathered outside the forge one last time, Flint rallied his crew, their arrogance palpable. "This old blacksmith thinks he can scare us off with threats," he laughed, a sound that echoed through the quiet streets of Ironwood. "He's just a man with a hammer." The gang members exchanged confident grins, clearly underestimating Otis and the strength of his convictions. "Let's teach him a lesson," one of them suggested, cracking his knuckles, while another chimed in, "He'll regret not doing business with us." Their laughter filled the air as they plotted their next moves, showing no concern for the consequences Otis had laid out. Flint stepped forward again, leaning against the forge's entrance with an air of superiority. "We'll find our weapons elsewhere if you won't help us," he declared dismissively. "But make no mistake, we'll be back, and when we do, it won't be for idle chat." He waved his hand as if brushing off any remaining thoughts of Otis's warnings. As they mounted their horses and prepared to leave, Flint threw one last taunt over his shoulder. "Keep your eyes open, Langley. You're about to face real trouble." The gang rode off into the distance, their confidence unwavering despite the gravity of Otis's previous words. Watching them depart, Otis felt a surge of both anger and determination swell within him. He realized these men were blinded by their egos and failed to grasp what lay beneath his quiet exterior. They didn't know that he was more than just a blacksmith. He was ready to defend Ironwood with every ounce of strength he possessed. As silence returned to the forge, Otis took a deep breath and began preparing for what was to come. He would not let their overconfidence lead to destruction in his town. The battle lines were drawn. It was clear that he would need to prepare not only for himself, but for those who depended on him and believed in hope against fear. In the days that followed, Otis transformed his forge from a place of creation into a stronghold, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with the Bone Creek gang. The once quiet workshop, filled with tools and the scent of heated metal, now became a fortress of sorts. As he worked alongside the rhythmic clang of metal against metal, Otis meticulously arranged his surroundings to be ready for whatever challenge lay ahead. He reinforced the entrance with heavy wooden beams scavenged from old crates, ensuring that it could withstand any force that might come crashing through. The windows were covered with sturdy shutters to keep prying eyes away, and to create a sense of secrecy about what was happening inside. In every corner of the forge, he placed tools not just for crafting but for defense. Hammers were kept close at hand, and tongs were arranged in strategic spots to grab quickly if needed. As he labored on his preparations, Otis maintained his quiet demeanor. He did not seek out help or rally the townspeople to his side. Instead, he preferred to work alone, reflecting on how far he had come since his days as a soldier. Each stroke of the hammer was a meditation on strength and resilience, reminding him of battles fought long ago. Despite being shrouded in silence, there was an undeniable air of determination about him. Otis also crafted small weapons, not for the gang, but as a way to defend his home should they return. Each knife or short sword bore not only his craftsmanship, but also an essence of defiance against those who would bring harm. As he stood back to survey his work, the forge felt more alive than ever, a sanctuary fortified by purpose. He envisioned it housing not just metal creations but also hope and protection for ironwood. With each passing moment leading up to the anticipated confrontation, Otis embraced his role as defender and protector, ready to face whatever storm would come knocking at his door. As Otis meticulously prepared his forge for the impending showdown, memories began to surface, vivid flashbacks of a life he had long left behind. He could see himself as a young soldier, standing in the heart of a battlefield, surrounded by chaos and the sounds of conflict. The air was thick with smoke, and shouts echoed all around as comrades fought bravely beside him. In one particular memory, Otis crouched behind a ridge, heart-pounding, as he surveyed the landscape littered with debris. His commanding officer barked orders, urging them forward into the fray. With every clash of metal against metal and cries of pain echoing in his ears, he fought not just with his weapon but with sheer willpower. It was a world far removed from the hammer and anvil of his current life, where he had learned to find strength in vulnerability. Another memory flooded his mind, Otis battling against skilled opponents in hand-to-hand combat. He remembered the way he had melted men before metal, using every ounce of training to protect those who could not defend themselves. Each action was a balance of strategy and ferocity, a dance of life and death that had honed skills buried beneath layers of introspection since taking up blacksmithing. The memories settled in his heart like weights, grounding him but also igniting a sense of purpose. He understood that his experiences were part of him, shaping who he had become. The quiet life he now led did not erase the strength and discipline of his past. Instead, it provided him with a newfound determination to protect ironwood. With each flashback replaying in his mind, Otis realized that he was ready, prepared to wield not only tools of craftsmanship, but also the resilience cultivated from years on the battlefield. As he returned to his forge, he felt more than just a blacksmith. He embraced the warrior within, ready to face whatever darkness the Bone Creek gang might bring to his town. With a fire ignited not just in the forge but in his heart, Otis set to work on creating weapons and tools for defense, knowing that every piece he forged would be crucial in the fight ahead. The transformation of his quiet workshop into a bastion of strength was not solely about his efforts. He would rally the townspeople to join him, instilling a sense of unity and purpose among them. As the hammer struck the anvil, ringing out with determination, Otis felt the rhythm of creation fill the air. He crafted sturdy swords with gleaming edges and sharp points, designed for both offense and defense. Each weapon was a symbol of hope, reminding the townsfolk that they could protect their home together. He poured his warrior spirit into every blade, feeling invigorated by the memories of battles long past. Soon enough, word spread through Ironwood that Otis was preparing for war. Townsfolk began to gather around the forge, drawn by a mix of curiosity and fear. Otis greeted them with resolve, explaining that they needed to unite against the threat of the Bone Creek gang. "We may be craftsmen, farmers, and shopkeepers," he said firmly, "but together we can defend our homes." Inspired by his confidence, volunteers emerged to assist him. Some helped in gathering materials from around town, others brought old weapons from their homes or tools that could be transformed into makeshift armaments. As Otis worked alongside them, he shared insights on how to wield these tools effectively for defense. The forge buzzed with energy as community members worked together under Otis's guidance. They fashioned shields from scrap metal and reinforced doorways with lumber while learning the art of creating weapons under his watchful eye. The atmosphere shifted. The fear that once gripped Ironwood began to dissipate as they forged not only weapons, but also a collective spirit. With each passing day, the forge became more than just a place for crafting iron. It evolved into a sanctuary of strength and camaraderie. Otis looked around at the faces of those he once knew only as acquaintances now transformed into allies. Together they prepared to face the storm looming on the horizon, ready to defend their town and each other against whatever darkness awaited them. As the days passed, the atmosphere in Ironwood shifted from one of fear to a palpable sense of unity among the townspeople. Under Otis's leadership, individuals who once barely exchanged nods began to find common purpose in the face of adversity. With each passing day, more and more townsfolk flocked to the forge, their determination fueling the fire within Otis's heart. Neighbors who had spent years apart now stood shoulder to shoulder, working tirelessly to prepare for the Bone Creek Gang's impending attack. The blacksmith had become a beacon of hope, and his forge thrummed with energy as laughter mixed with clanging metal. Young and old came together. Farmers, shopkeepers, and craftspeople all added their skills to the defense effort. Women wove strong nets from ropes and fabric, while men reinforced doors and windows with wooden planks and nails. Children eagerly gathered kindling for fires, learning the importance of community and bravery. With each task completed, a feeling of empowerment radiated through Ironwood, reminding them that they were not alone in their fight. Otis took time to teach those willing to learn about weaponry. He explained proper stances for wielding swords and the importance of teamwork in battle. Many had never held a weapon before, but under his patient guidance they grew more confident. He told stories of courage and resilience from his own past, igniting a fire in their hearts. As they worked together, the forge became a sanctuary filled with laughter and camaraderie. They shared meals during breaks, forging friendships that would last beyond this moment of crisis. With each clang of metal and every shared laugh, the townspeople strengthened their resolve. When the day of reckoning finally arrived, they stood gathered outside Otis's forge, ready to defend their home. Together they formed a line of solidarity, a united front against the Bone Creek Gang that sought to bring fear to their lives. Otis looked at the faces around him, filled with determination, and knew that they were prepared not just to fight, but to protect what was rightfully theirs. Ironwood was strong because its people were united, and together they would face whatever darkness approached. The day of the confrontation dawned with a heavy sky, casting shadows over Ironwood as the townspeople gathered in front of Otis's forge, armed with makeshift weapons and a newfound courage. Otis stood at the forefront, his presence steady and unwavering. He had devised a strategy, knowing that unity and teamwork would be their greatest strengths against the Bone Creek Gang. As the gang approached, Flint led them with an arrogant swagger. The townsfolk stood resolute behind Otis, ready to defend their home. With one final glance at his neighbors, Otis raised his voice. "We stand together today, this is our home, and we will not let you take it from us." Flint laughed derisively, waving his hand dismissively at the assembled group. "You think a bunch of farmers and shopkeepers can take on us? You'll regret this," he shouted back, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. As the tension escalated, Otis signaled for the townsfolk to remain calm. They had prepared traps around the perimeter, barricades made from scrap wood and barrels filled with rocks to slow down any attackers. When Flint's men charged forward, they were met with resistance that caught them off guard. The first wave of gang members stumbled into the snares laid by the townspeople, falling to the ground as Otis's friends fought back with determination. They moved as one unit under Otis's guidance. He directed them to cover their flanks and protect each other as they pushed back against the gang. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected twist occurred when one of Flint's own gang members hesitated during the assault. He recognized a childhood friend among the townsfolk. This moment of doubt created a ripple effect within the gang ranks. Some began to question their loyalty to Flint as they witnessed the strength and bravery of Ironwood's people. Seizing this opportunity, Otis rallied his fellow townsfolk even further. "Now is our chance, stand firm," he urged, inspiring them to push forward while maintaining their defensive positions. With each passing moment, it became clearer. Ironwood was more than just a town. It was a community united by hope and resilience. The Bone Creek Gang was no match for their collective strength as they fought not just for themselves, but for each other and everything they held dear. The clash between the townspeople of Ironwood and the Bone Creek Gang reached its climax amid the din of battle. With Otis leading the charge, the townsfolk fought with all their might, emboldened by the sense of community they had forged in preparation for this moment. Otis wielded his sword skillfully, a testament to his past as a soldier, his movements precise and deliberate as he defended his friends and neighbors. As the fight raged on, Otis spotted Flint attempting to rally his gang, trying to instill fear in their hearts. Armed with nothing but arrogance, Flint underestimated the strength of the united townsfolk. Otis seized the opportunity, rallying his fellow defenders to push forward. "We fight for our homes, we fight for each other," he shouted, igniting a fire within everyone around him. Just then an unexpected twist unfolded. The gang member who had hesitated earlier, recognizing a childhood friend among the townspeople, stepped forward and turned against Flint. "I won't fight for you anymore," he declared, his voice cutting through the chaos. This act of defiance sparked a ripple effect among the other gang members, causing confusion and doubt within their ranks. With Flint losing control over his gang, Otis capitalized on this moment of weakness. He led his group in a strategic maneuver, flanking the remaining attackers and driving them back toward the edge of town. The tide of battle began to shift in favor of Ironwood as the townspeople fought valiantly, inspired by Otis's bravery and unwavering determination. In the end, the Bone Creek gang found themselves outmatched and overwhelmed by the unity and resilience of Ironwood citizens. As Flint's men fled in disarray, Otis stood tall amidst his friends and neighbors, their faces reflecting both relief and pride. The battle had been hard fought, but they had defended their home together. With victory secured, Otis turned to face the townspeople, pride swelling in his chest. "Today we proved that we are stronger together," he said, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. They had not only defended their town, but forged unbreakable bonds in the process. Ironwood would forever stand as a testament to their courage and unity against adversity, and Otis knew that this was just the beginning of their shared journey forward. With the threat of the Bone Creek gang now behind them, Otis stood at the forge, reflecting on the journey that had led him to this moment. The sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air as the townspeople celebrated their hard-won victory. It was a scene he had longed for during the darker days of his past, a community united, strong, and free from fear. Otis took a moment to survey the faces around him, friends, neighbors, and allies who had stood by him during the battle. They were no longer just townsfolk, but a family forged in adversity. Each person had played a crucial role in defending Ironwood, bringing together various skills and strengths that complemented one another beautifully. This newfound camaraderie rekindled the fire of hope within him. In reflecting on his dual identity as both a blacksmith and protector, Otis realized that he had come to embrace both roles fully. His blacksmithing was not merely a craft but a service to his community. Each weapon he forged now symbolized not just power, but also resilience and unity against threats. He understood that true strength lies not just in physical capabilities, but in the bonds formed through shared experiences. As he worked on repairs for the forge, Otis thought about how different life had become since he first set foot in Ironwood. What began as a quiet existence focused on solitude had transformed into something profoundly fulfilling, being part of a community that relied on one another. He smiled at the thought that his past as a soldier, something he once saw as a burden, now served as a wellspring of courage. Otis raised his hammer once more, feeling invigorated by the spirit of those around him. He wasn't just crafting objects from metal, he was forging a future for Ironwood, a future built on trust and solidarity. As they continued to rebuild and grow stronger together, Otis knew their collective journey had only just begun. With their hearts aligned and their spirits high, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead as one indomitable force.